guys, it's Will from Tested.
And it's Norm from Tested.
Norm, it is cooking season.
The holiday season.
The holidays, yeah. It's Thanksgiving's around the corner, Christmas after that. All the food holidays are upon us.
Time to get fat.
It's time to get fat. I've been cooking a ton lately. I've been experimenting with some new stuff. We've done some sous vide cooking before.
Sous vide, that's cooking in a water bath.
It's in a water bath. Sous vide actually means under vacuum, I think, in French. I don't know why they call it under vacuum, except for you do use a vacuum sealer to suck the air out of the bags usually when you're cooking in the water bath.
And it's a relatively modern technique.
It was actually first described in the 18th century, but it became popular in the 60s and 70s, starting in, I think, France and Belgium, and then it's kind of made its way across the world. And over the last few years, there's been a proliferation of high-end immersion circulators. That's what this guy over here is. This is an immersion circulator. What it is basically is a tool that heats and circulates the water so that all the water in here is within a couple of tenths of a degree Celsius of all the rest of the water in here.
So people who watched last year when we did some sous vide, DIY sous viding, which a lot of people have been doing.
I would call that ghetto sous vide.
Very, very, very low-tech sous viding. We used a water cooler. And like a cooler you take to a party or baseball game, and put a steak in that, and then using a thermometer and pouring hot water, maintain that temperature, and cooked a really good steak.
Yeah, so immersion circulators have been in professional kitchens for the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years, depending on where you are. But they're really expensive. So they range from $400 or $500 for like a sous vide supreme, all the way up to $800, $900 for the Polyscience high-end, the things you see on Top Chef. Right. And those are professional tools. Therefore, they're designed to be used pretty much constantly, and they're a little different than this new wave of sous vide devices that are on the market now. So this is the Anova Immersion Circulator. It's relatively new. I think it just went on sale a couple of weeks ago. There's also the Sansaire and the Sidekick, which we've seen on Kickstarter and I think Indiegogo or something like that. As well as some other products. And
not only is this new wave of immersion circulators designed for the home in terms of price, like this is around $200 as opposed to $500.
Yeah.
They're more considerate of things that how loud it is in the home and type of.
Some are, some aren't, and some even do things like work with a rice cooker or a crock pot. So they're basically just a thermostat that you hook onto your crock pot that then it turns the crock pot on or off at the power plug to maintain the temperature that you want inside the bowl of the crock. So we'll talk about this particular device in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about sous vide because it's kind of complex and it's not immediately obvious why it's beneficial, and it's a little bit of a hassle. So it's worth talking about when you use it and when it's better to do something else.
Sure.
The reason you use a water bath to cook food like this is it lets you very precisely control the temperature of the food. So instead of, say, putting a steak on a 500 or 600 degree griddle or a grill and cooking it for 2 minutes on a side, 2 minutes on a side, turning the heat down, cooking it for 4 minutes on a side, 4 minutes on a side, which will get you to a pretty nice medium rare on a good sized steak. Instead of doing that and trying to time the temperature, like making it its way through the meat, what you do is you set the bath to the temperature you want the meat to end up, chuck the steak in a plastic bag, and you leave it for an hour, 40 minutes or an hour, and it'll cook to the amount that you're going to want to eat it. It'll be fully cooked when it comes out of that bag. So perfect medium rare.
A very precise control of temperature, which you don't have even with a really good oven. Right. And also control over time.
And then there's some other things you can do as well. So, it's difficult to cook a piece of, one of the tougher cuts of beef, like a pot roast or short ribs or something like that. You end up having to cook them over a long period of time. Either you cook them in a very low oven for hours and hours and hours, or perhaps you braise them in liquid and you braise them and then take them out and cool them down, and then you braise them again and then you take them out and cool them down. And it's a really long, involved process, but it takes a tough piece of meat that's has a lot of collagen and a lot of connective tissue, and it melts that collagen into gelatin, and you end up with a really delicious, super tender, like forkable piece of short rib or pot roast or something like that.
It's like very, very slow roasting.
Exactly. Now with an immersion circulator and a water bath, you can do the exact same thing, but without having to kind of keep fiddling with it. So you put your pot roast in a big freezer bag or in a vacuum bag, and drop it in there, set the temperature to whatever you want the pot roast to end up, and just leave it for 72 hours.
Wow.
This can run for days. There's some evaporation issues. You'll probably want to use a little more insulated container than the one that we have here, like a cooler or something like that. But it'll cook for a long time, and that collagen will break down. It'll become incredibly tender, and the gelatin will melt, and it'll be delicious. It's great.
Awesome.
So that's it. After you cook
that's
the meat,
the basic premise.
That's the basic principle. Once you take the meat out of the bag, it's not finished yet, because you for beef and especially in pork and things like that, you want to have a little bit of a sear on the outside, mainly because it tastes good.
Yeah, even for fish.
Not necessarily fish. I usually don't finish fish.
I like a salmon to have a nice finish.
A crust on the top. Crust. So you can cook fish in here. You can also cook fish in a Ziploc bag in the sink if you really want, if you aren't squeamish about that. I like to get the fish to about 120 degrees. And I like to treat it like it's been like oil poached, basically. So then you don't have a sear on it. But you can chuck it on the grill afterwards if you're into that. The Maillard reaction is this thing that happens when you apply very high temperature and it actually burns the outside of the meat. It's what gives a steak its char, and it has a very distinct flavor. It tastes good, and it helps add some structure and texture to the rest of the meat.
The sugars kind of...
The sugars caramelize. If you have any kind of a marinade on there, it also helps to sear the salt and pepper if you put that on the outside of your steak. And one of the things I make most often in this is a steak. So I'll put a couple of steaks in the bags, let them cook for 40 minutes, take them out. They come out looking like a solid. It's as if you took a really giant thick steak that was cooked perfectly medium rare and sliced the charred parts off the top and the bottom. So then I rub it with a little bit of olive oil maybe, because a lot of the fat will have rendered away. Salt and pepper, sometimes I do butter. And you can either put it on a grill, put it on a griddle, put it in a frying pan, put it under the broiler for a few minutes, or you can get crazy and bust out a blowtorch and just hold up the steak and let her rip. You want to do that for most of the meats that you do. Poultry I don't generally do. So you can do, for example, a chicken breast if you're making chicken salad, or like a chicken casserole, something that requires a cooked chicken before, somewhere before the finishing. You normally boil the chicken. You can put the chicken in a Ziploc bag with a little bit of olive oil. Put it in here for an hour, hour and a half. It'll cook perfectly. It's really delicious.
That is, you're not overcooking or undercooking. You're getting to exactly the right temperature.
Exactly.
And you talked about meats, chicken, and we have eggs here. You can sous vide a lot of different things.
You can even do vegetables.
Or vegetables. What determines what temperature you want that to be at?
So there's two things. One is the amount that you want it cooked. So for red meat, of course, 125 to 130 Fahrenheit is going to be a medium rare steak. And depending even on the type of steak, the cut of steak and the amount of fat and the amount of collagen and stuff like that, you're going to adjust the temperatures and times a little bit. There's several really good books. Thomas Keller wrote a book called Under Pressure, Cooking Sous Vide. It's kind of expensive. It's a little bit difficult to find. It's like $50. The Modernist Cuisine at Home book by the folks we talked to last year up in Seattle has a great sous vide chapter. I think it's available in ebook form. It's also really expensive. The other option is, there's a ton of blogs that do this. Polyscience has great instructions. Dave Arnold, who you met in New York a couple weeks ago.
Chief technologist at the French Culinary Institute.
Exactly.
New York.
He's done a series of 2 really amazing blog posts about sous vide cooking with protein, and then he also did a whole separate post about eggs. So, and we'll talk about eggs in a minute, because eggs are really interesting when you're talking about this kind of cooking. But the basic upshot is you want to make sure that the temperature of the meat, it stays at a high enough to pasteurize and reduce the bacterial content in the meat. So this is the other part of it, it's food safety. The USDA, the basic guidelines that the USDA gives for cooking meat, say chicken, to safety is based on the temperature it takes to reduce the bacteria in the chicken by X amount. I think it's 7 log 10. I'm bad at math, so I don't know what that means, but it basically means that it's a curve of bacterial growth, and you want the curve to get way down here to the flat part where it's not going down anymore. And you do that, you can do that a bunch of different ways. You can take the meat, the entirety of the meat, to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which does that instantly. There's no, the moment the meat hits 165 degrees Fahrenheit, it's completely safe to eat. However, it's also a function of time. So if you cook the meat at 130 degrees for 40 minutes, I think, is that what I said? 140 degrees for 30 minutes, or 40 minutes, you'll have the same exact effect, and you won't dry out the chicken as much. Because what happens is, the hotter the meat gets, the more the proteins change. And in some meats, they're going to twist up, and that'll squeeze the water out. In some, they'll release and loosen, and then you'll have a weird, flaccid piece of meat.
So if you do like chicken 110 degrees for like 2 days.
I don't think I would. I think that's too low.
Okay.
I think you're living too close to the edge.
It's a curve.
There's a curve.
And you can find a sweet spot. Or if you can maintain a temperature long enough at that point, you don't need to overcook it and dry meat out.
It's a little complex because the USDA guidelines for this is this table. It's an enormous PDF table with cooking times and temperatures and bacterial densities and all that. So the best thing to do is to find somebody who's done the homework that you trust. Dave's blog is great. It's free. It has all the information you're looking for. And I think he even gets down into like, if you're doing a ribeye, you want to cook it for this long. If you're doing a New York strip, you want to cook it for this long. The Modern Cuisine at Home stuff is also very good.
The takeaway is that it's not just an ideal temperature.
Yeah.
The goal is to get rid of all the bacteria that would be damaging your health.
Exactly.
But the temperature and time are trade-offs that you can use. And because you have something that's precise, then that's where the cooking science comes in.
And you may not want to cook, like maybe, yes, you can cook the chicken at 130 or 140 degrees, but you may actually want it to be a little more cooked than that. Sure. People are a little squeamish about rare chicken. I can't imagine why, but I don't eat rare chicken. I eat rare everything. So that's how you determine time and stuff. We should talk about how you prep this stuff because excuse me.
Yeah, excuse you.
It's a little tricky. I'm going to scooch the circulator over here so you can see this guy.
Yeah, so there's the device which we'll talk about in a little bit. We have the Anova here, that's the Immersion Circulator. That's the new piece of technology, but there are a bunch of accessories you need to make it work.
You don't necessarily need any accessories. You can do a lot of what you're going to do as long as you're not cooking for a long time in Ziplocs. Like if you're cooking steaks, eggs, as you can see, can just go in by themselves. If you're cooking steaks, I've done them in Ziploc bags before without any problem. You do want to use Ziploc brand bags. There's a simplification, but across their product line, they don't use plastics that leach out into the food, which you want to avoid when you're cooking stuff at temperature. So it's a word that I'm not going to be able to pronounce correctly on air, but buying Ziplocs is the easiest way to avoid that. The next thing to do is to look at vacuum sealers. So that's what this guy is. It's a little machine. Basically, it has a chamber here that you put the end of a bag in, and it has a vacuum pump that sucks the air out of that area of the thing. And then it also in the front has a little heat strip that heats up some plastic to a high temperature. So you put the vacuum bag in here, you mash it shut, it pinches the end of the bag closed, sucks all the air out, and you end up with a piece of meat or vegetables, whatever, in a bag that has very little air in it.
Creates an airtight seal because you don't want the water leaking in.
Water will give you nasty gray steaks, so you don't want to put a $20 steak in a bag and then fuck it up really bad.
As much air out to improve the heat transfer.
Heat transfer, and the more air you get out, the more likely the bag is to float, which means you don't to sink rather, which means you don't have to use some annoying mechanism to keep the bag at the bottom because you don't. The only way you can really mess this up is if you let the bags float at the top of the thing, and only part of the meat is exposed to the water. And then of course also with stuff like eggs, you can just drop them straight in the bath. Typically, unless something goes wrong, you don't have food coming into contact with the circulator. So it's easy to clean. There's not a whole lot to that. And that's pretty much it.
You need a container.
You need a container. You can use a big bowl. These are Chembro plastic bins. They're not terribly expensive. They're in every restaurant in the world. You can get them at any restaurant supply place. I think you can get them on Amazon, although they cost a fair amount to ship, as I recall. And this one is, I think, a half gallon or maybe 3/4 of a gallon. So the heater can handle up to 5 gallons on a 110 volt outlet. Like 5 gallons is going to cook half a pig.
Yeah.
Because you don't put, it's not like a Thanksgiving fryer, turkey fryer, where you put the whole turkey in. If you're going to cook something as large as a turkey or a pig or a piece of lamb, you're going to probably break down the meat, take it off of a lot of the bones, bag each piece individually, and cook it in separate times and temperatures. So you don't need a massive amount of space. This is the size that I end up using on my counter more often than not.
All right.
Okay, so all the air's out of the bag. It's in. It goes in for the time that's specified in your cookbook or on blog sites or whatever you figure out. And then you take it out. You open the bag. You sear it, season it, sear it, and serve it. Basically, it's cooked food. Safe to cook the moment you eat. The moment you take it out of the bag.
Easier than cleaning a big pan or your oven.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot less mess. It's a little more time intensive because we'll show you how to bag stuff in a little bit. It takes a little bit of time.
But you can set it and forget it for a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And because the vacuum sealing process is actually really good to preserve meat, you can actually bag all your steaks when you come in from the grocery store, leave them in the fridge. They'll keep for a lot longer in the vacuum bag, and then you can just chuck them in the bin when you're ready to cook. So, and like I said, the time to cook varies wildly. You don't want to leave stuff in too long. You know, if you put a piece of chicken, a chicken breast in a bag for 4 hours, it's going to come out like a chickeny flavored mush. It's not good.
Yeah, the collagens will break down completely.
Yeah, you'll have no connective tissue, and it'll just be some like denatured protein floating around in there. Same thing for steaks. If you cook them too long, they lose their texture and get a little rubbery and weird. But like I said, stuff like the short ribs, you're going to cook those for 3 days, and they're great. So, so yeah, that's pretty much that stuff. I use it, so the reason I have eggs in here is that eggs are really tricky.
So eggs are a good demonstration of the precision of the temperature.
Exactly. It's a good test for the device, and they're delicious. How many components do you think are inside the eggshell on a normal chicken egg?
3 components.
You know that because we did this yesterday.
Yes,
we're doing it again
absolutely. Now. There's an egg yolk and there's 2 whites.
Yes, so there's loose whites, runny whites, and tight whites. When you poach an egg, if you've ever poached an egg before...
You want the tidy whites.
No, you don't want the tidy whites.
Oh, get rid of the tidy whites.
Get rid of the tidy whites.
Okay.
So you poach the egg, you crack it, you dip it into your boiling water, and you immediately see kind of it kind of splooshes out from the side. That's all the loose whites of the egg just kind of disappear, and they incorporate with the rest of the liquid in the pan. You're never going to see them again. The tight whites are the ones that kind of cling up and hang around the outside of the yolk, and they make that pretty kind of container that holds the whole yolk in.
So you do want the tight whites.
You know what? You're right. You do want the tight whites. Okay. You want to get rid of the loose whites.
That's right.
So I cook. Dave Arnold had a great post. They reprinted in Lucky Peach a few months ago, or second issue, I think, about eggs. And he cooked eggs at a ton of different temperatures because there are the 3 components in the egg, and each one has different characteristics at different temperatures. To do an egg in a water bath like this and cook everything the way you're going to want to eat it and get to one temperature, it's a little bit tricky. So the end result is that like somewhere between 63.8 degrees Celsius, sorry for switching back and forth between Celsius and Fahrenheit, but I do eggs in Celsius and meat in Fahrenheit, and that's not changing. Somewhere around 64 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius, you get an egg where the white is cooked perfectly, and the yolk is still runny and delicious, and it's not starting to gel up or get weird in any way. And it's a perfect egg, and it's essentially poached inside the shell.
Wow.
So I have 4 of those here.
Yeah, let's go check those out.
This is 130. The other thing that's interesting about the sous vide stuff is that these eggs, because they've been cooking for a while, I cooked them at 63. Excuse me. I cooked them at 63.8 Celsius, and then we weren't ready to shoot yet. So I turned the temperature down to about 130 Fahrenheit, which is 54.4 Celsius.
You're saying there's a cooking temperature, and then there's a keep it stable temperature.
Right, and this is the hold temperature. So the neat thing about this is hot enough for me to grab my hand in? Oh, that's really hot.
We have devices.
A spoon. The hold temperature for eggs is about 130 Fahrenheit, 54.4 Celsius. And the neat thing about that is when you put the cooked egg in there, it stays cooked and nothing changes. If I left it at 64 Fahrenheit, or 64 Celsius, the yolk would have kept getting thicker and thicker and thicker until it was almost like pudding, which is not what you want when you're eating eggs. You want a nice runny yolk. By lowering it to 130, it'll hold indefinitely. But you can do the same thing with a raw egg. So if you want to make mayonnaise or Caesar salad dressing, something that you're twitchy about putting raw egg into, you can take an egg that is raw, put it in 130 for a few hours, it'll completely wipe out all the bacteria that are inside, so it's completely safe. And then you can have and when you crack it, it appears to be a completely raw egg.
And then you can blend it.
Blend it, do whatever you need to do. Emulsify, do your worst.
And it'll even get hot enough to make a soft-boiled egg or a hard-boiled egg?
Soft-boiled and hard-boiled are functions of boiling and time. This is essentially a soft-boiled egg. We're not going to bust the top open. But if you wanted to make this a soft-boiled egg, you could drop it in boiling water for 45 seconds, and the outside's going to thicken up considerably, hopefully without cooking the yolk too much.
Hope it's not a hard-boiled egg.
The other thing is you can cook these eggs at 64 degrees Fahrenheit, cook a whole dozen at once, put them in the fridge, and then just heat them back up at 130 till the point that you're ready to eat them. So you don't have to do this all at once. It's not like you have to get up. It takes about 40 minutes to do these eggs. So are you ready to have I don't think we have any forks, but that's probably okay.
I really hope it's not a hard-boiled egg.
You love hard-boiled eggs,
The thing I hate most in the world?
Let me guess. Racism.
That's number 1. Number 2, hard-boiled eggs.
That is a perfect soft-boiled egg.
I'm going to go show the camera.
It's over here somewhere. Oh, well, that works. Do you have anything to poke it open with?
I don't want to do that.
You want me to do another one and poke it? Let's see if I can do this with no shell. Whoop. Oh, it's beautiful. Where's my fork? I'm going to bust this open. And it has a beautiful yellow runny yolk in there. It's all perfectly cooked. It's delicious. You salt and pepper that. Have that for breakfast every day. Yum. Try the egg, Norm. Eat the egg, Norm.
I will also crack this egg. See how runny this is. And this is exactly what you want a poached egg.
Yeah, so, and if you want it to look more like a traditional poached egg, you can actually do a little tiny, like, knock around, make a hole in this, and pour it into the water just very quickly and pull it right back out. And it's delicious. But I like to put these in, like, ramen and soup.
130 degrees.
130 degrees.
100, exactly.
Perfect. Well, it's a little cool now. It's been on the desk for a bit, but still delicious. And the interesting thing is they don't follow the hard-boiled. You can't tell by spinning them whether they're hard-boiled or soft-boiled.
So you can fool people.
I can trick people and say, okay, you can just smash this on your forehead. It's totally safe.
Yeah,
and then they get a horrible burn.
That's right.
So it's great. We teach them important lessons. So that's the basics on cooking in a water bath. People call them water ovens, water baths. There's a lot of information online.
Jacuzzi for food.
Yeah, you can even do this in a hot tub. You can cook fish in a hot tub if you're crazy.
Temperature is regulated.
105 degrees, yeah.
Hot tub.
So this particular model that I've been testing is the Anova Immersion Circulator. It's one of the new wave of these tools. It's about $200. You can get it on Amazon. I've been using it for a month, and I've cooked a variety of things. I've cooked a ton of eggs, which I was a little bit up and down, but we got to a really good place in the end. And yeah, it's let me actually turn it off so we can take it out and show you the different bits and pieces. But it has a touch screen.
Okay.
And the touch screen, you can control temperature. You can display in Fahrenheit or Celsius. It has a hour and minutes timer. So it starts out looking like it's going to be minutes and seconds, and then you get really confused because it says we have 3 days left to go, and the timer never goes down. You can change between Fahrenheit and Celsius. You can calibrate it. So this was actually really important. I find that if you're cooking steak, it doesn't really matter. A couple of tenths of a degree off doesn't make a difference. But with the eggs, you really want to dial that in. So I actually have a really high quality thermocouple based thermometer, a thermopen, that reads temperatures in a fraction of a second and is NIST certified to a tenth of a degree or something like that.
So you're calibrating the finished product, the finished hot water.
Yes.
And calibrating for the container.
Exactly.
That you're putting the immersion circulator in.
And like I said, that really only matters when you're doing eggs, at least so far I've found. Maybe fish makes a little bit of a difference. But to calibrate, I basically left the machine running, got it up to temperature, and then stuck my probe where the food ends up, which is always opposite the force of the water. And kind of adjusted it until the thermocouple pen, the thermometer and the thermometer in here agreed with each other.
All right.
So that's really important if you want to do eggs. If you don't want to do eggs, the calibration matters much less. But let's open it up. So there's two things that come off. This is just the shield for the impeller and the thing. This guy down here is the impeller. It spins, pushes water.
The circulator part.
Exactly, out of this little tiny hole here.
So you can spin that and water gets pushed out that way.
Yeah, it sucks in these vents on the top, goes through a little hole in here in the bottom, and blows out that hole.
And so you can point that.
Can you hold that for a sec?
You can point that hole.
Yeah, so this hole is on a screw bottom, so you can twist the bottom part and aim it no matter, you can put this in any corner you want and aim the water in any direction you want, and it works fine. So then the other stuff is there's a thermometer in here, and this guy right here is a heating element. The heating element in these turns on and off very quickly for very short periods of time. So it's not like the heating element sets itself to 130 degrees. What happens is it works like a PWM circuit on a LED, on a dimmable LED light. So it measures the temperature coming in constantly, is constantly sampling, and turns on and off based on where it's projecting the temperature is going to go. So whether it's going up or down. Typically it holds it within a couple of tenths of a degree in either direction.
It has no sense of how big the bath is.
It doesn't have any idea.
So the circulation speed is always the same.
Yes.
So for a larger container, up to 5 gallons, for example, it's going to take longer for it to reach that temperature.
Yeah, the good thing about the whole process is the temperatures you're dealing with aren't excessive.
Yeah.
So tap water comes out at about 125 degrees, depending on what you have your hot water heater set at. When you're filling the bath, if you fill it with hot water, which again, normally you don't use hot water in the kitchen because you don't want the rust and sediment and all the crap that comes in your hot water heater. But since the water's not coming in contact with the food, it doesn't matter.
It's okay to put hot water in.
Put the hottest water you have in there, and you can even crank it up a little bit, get it going faster by dumping in hot water from your tea kettle or something like that. So you
Other features of the Innova?
Back?
The clamp.
The clamp. So yeah, we should talk about the clamp. The clamp is unfortunate. It's the part of the design that I don't like. The distance from here to the plunger that holds it in. So this little plunger screws in and pinches it to the side of your container isn't tall enough for a lot of lipped containers. It works okay on this Chenbro, but it ends up being Chembro, but it ends up being tilted back just a little bit. It's not a problem. It's just a little bit annoying. I feel like there could be a better clamp here. The power plug comes in the back here, and there's a power switch on the top that's hard power on, hard power off.
How much power does that draw?
So the 5-gallon limit is based on the power that comes out of your outlet. The amount of power it draws cooking any particular thing is going to vary based on the container you're cooking in. Okay. Because obviously if you're in a more insulated container, once the water gets up to temperature, the heater is going to have to work less to maintain that temperature. Yep. So if you put it in a cooler, it's going to run for a very short period of time every hour. The bad news is because of the way this clamp works, I don't have a cooler that it'll hook on really. So when I did the short ribs, it stayed in a bucket like this, and I'm sure it cost me $20 of
And there are
power.
ways that you can improve your cooler, your container, to insulate the heat better.
Yeah, so especially if you're going to do a lot of long-term stuff, you want to put something over top of the water both to insulate it and to protect from evaporation. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that they did at the Modernist Cuisine kitchen when we were there last year is they put a bunch of ping pong balls on the top, which serves both purposes. The air inside the ping pong balls insulates the water from the outside air, which is much cooler, and it also helps slow down evaporation.
How long do you think before we see like a vacuum flask cooker?
I don't think it's not really necessary. I mean, and so that would be crazy expensive.
Regular cooler.
Yeah, I mean, find a regular cooler that your immersion circulator will hook on. My hunch is that we're going to see a ton of these in the coming year because there's not a whole lot to it. The programming to get the PWM controller right so that it'll maintain temperature is a little bit tricky. But beyond that, it's a fairly simple mechanism. And I mean, I think $800 or $400 is too much to pay for this. It's something you don't probably use every day, but if you eat a fair amount of meat, you might use it every week. $200 is eminently fair for what you get on one of these devices. And like I said, there's a few more coming. We're going to test all of them.
The differences will be how loud it is. It's the algorithm it's using to turn on the heating element.
Yeah, the controls that are available to you. This one has a timer. So yeah, this one has a timer that, like I said, it goes up to I think 99 hours, which is more than you're probably going to ever want to cook anything. Right. When the timer expires, you can set the device to either turn off entirely or to start making beeping noises to let you know that it's done.
Oh, and there's a max and min sensor, so it knows.
Oh, right. Yeah, so you won't burn the house down if the water evaporates away, which is important. So yeah, this is the Anova. It's $200. I quite like it. It's a little bit louder than I would want, especially if I lived in a small apartment. Like I heard this every night when I was cooking the short ribs. I have a 1,000 square foot house. It's a Bay Area mansion, but it's a kind of low droning hum. Most people will probably tune it out after a while, but you may not want to be listening to that.
That's only if you're cooking stuff overnight.
And it's only if you're cooking stuff for a long time. Most of the stuff that you cook in this is 40 minutes to 2 hours.
Or at most set it in the morning, come back in the evening. You can have something.
You got to be a little careful with that because you don't want the bacterial growth that happens at room temperature is kind of gnarly. Sure. So you may not want to do that. But what I typically do is when I get home from work, I have the stuff already in the bag. I drop it in the bath, turn the bath on, and it's done by the time we're ready to eat dinner. So
let's give a demonstration of
the vacuum seal
with the vacuum seal.
So we have a steak over here.
Ah, look at that steak. New York steak, New York strip.
A New York strip, I think. Here's the vacuum sealer, and the way this works, like I said, is pretty straightforward. The bags come in rolls. They're relatively inexpensive. I think I have bought rolls once in the last 10 years, and it costs like $15 for more of them than I'll use for a very long time.
Vacuum sealers can range from $30 to several $100s.
They can go up to almost $1,000. This is called an edge sealer. So what that means is that you have a little tiny vacuum area. You put the food in the vacuum area, the food in the bag, and then seal the vacuum area. there's these things called chamber vacuums, which are scientific instruments. I'm going to push that out of the way. Scientific instruments, and the limitation of this is you can't really do stuff with liquid in it. So you can't. I can't do a marinade in a bag with the meat, or else it's going to get in this channel and make a huge mess.
Got it. And also the amount you pay also determines how big your container, how wide your bag can be.
But the edge sealers are really inexpensive. I think this was $20 when I bought it a decade ago.
Totally usable.
It's an 8-inch sealer, which is a pretty good size. You can put all the steaks you want in. You can put stuff like a beef tenderloin or pork tenderloin. You can't. I don't think I could get a turkey breast in here unless it was a very small turkey. But
ribs?
Ribs will fit. Okay. Depends on maybe pork ribs, not beef ribs.
Got it.
So, so the first thing you do is close one end of the bag, and I could go ahead and cut this because you can look at the steak and see that the steak is one length and the bag is going to be about that length too. But just in case you miss the edge seal or something like that, I like to cut the bag after I've already sealed one edge. So you line up the edge of the bag. Don't put it in the vacuum chamber yet, because if you do that, what it's going to do is pull all the air from the bag, which is never going to stop because the other end of the bag is open. So what it does, excuse me. So what it does is sucks the air out of the chamber, and once it detects a low enough pressure in here, it triggers the heating element on this edge sealer, and you end up with this, which is, as you can see, a sealed bag.
Yep.
Now I like to do it twice just because I'm putting an expensive piece of meat in here and I don't want to lose my $15 piece of meat because my $20 vacuum sealer was shitty, so.
Double seal?
Double seals. Excuse me. I'm going to keep saying excuse me. So now I have 2 seals. I can hold this up and look at the steak and say, okay,
that's about okay.
That's probably about right. More than enough space. I conveniently have a pair of scissors here on the floor beside me. I'm gonna make this one a little bit bigger. Is a little bit better than smaller for this, just because it's easier to get the excess air out. Now, so I have a one-sided bag. I'm gonna drop the steak in here.
Now, if you were doing fish, you would put some oils in there?
You can. So there's 2 reasons you use oil in this. One is because you want to add some flavor or add a little bit of fat. The other is that you want to give liquid a way to get out, like something else to help push the liquid out, or the air out rather. Like also, you can use the liquid if you're in a Ziploc, if you're using a Ziploc or something like that, and you don't actually have the vacuum sealer. So you can use water displacement to push the air out using a Ziploc bag. So all that means is you put the meat in, dunk the bag in the water, zip the bag up when everything's underwater, and you end up with a Ziploc bag that works just as well as these vacuum bags.
Or you can hang, the edge of the Ziploc.
Exactly.
The meat is weighted down. All right.
Go ahead and hit
seal
this guy.
You're not putting salt or anything in. That comes after. Ooh, look at that. It's like storing clothes in a vacuum bag and you put it in your closet.
Do those things work?
I have no idea.
I gotta imagine they don't. I bet you they couldn't hear a word we just said.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and seal this a second time just so that there's no mistakes.
You gotta seal it twice on both sides, otherwise
the redundancy on one side doesn't do any good. It's kind of rhythmic.
What note is that?
Is it a brown note?
No, it's not.
So double seal. You can see the steaks in the bag, all done, and just sink it in the water and run the water.
Oh, it's floating. Don't want that.
It's floating. No, it'll go down.
All right.
So that's it. That'll cook for 40 minutes. I'll take it out, blowtorch it, and then we can have some steak.
Awesome.
So, so that's sous vide. If people have questions about immersion circulators or sous vide, then they can definitely post comments in the thread below, either on Tested or on YouTube. It's a really interesting way to cook meat. It's not for everyone. It takes a lot of extra time in some cases. In some cases, it actually saves you a ton of time. And the neat thing about this is it scales really well. Yeah. So if you have 10 people coming over, you're making 10 steaks. It's really hard to get 10 steaks finished and cooked at the same time at home for most people. This makes that very doable.
You could put several steaks in that.
Yeah, I'd probably use a bigger container. You don't want to crowd. But the egg thing is also super important. When I had 6 or 8 people over a few weeks ago for breakfast, I had 15 eggs done at exactly the same time, and I just rolled out a basket of eggs and told people to crack them over their toast, and they were blown away. It's a very showy kind of way to serve some food
in the kitchen.
Exactly. So that's sous vide cooking. We'll be back with more from Tested soon. If you have questions, like I said, post them below. We'll do our best to answer everything we can. And check out Tested.com for more great stuff. We'll see you guys later.
Have a happy holiday.
Bye.
Bye.
Life is precious, we won't waste a day. A little less work and a little more play. Let's leave the business world in our wake. We'll pack 2 bags and take a break. Happiness is something you just can't fake. So let's keep it real and take a break.